A very good afternoon to all meditators, brothers and sisters in the Dharma. The first question, since there is no self, why are we practicing sharing and accruing merits to our departed being, relatives and friends, in bracket, no fixed entity, during our daily chanting practices? Then the second question, there's many records of reincarnation by one scientist, Steve. Since Buddhists do not believe in this only rebirth, please help to enlighten. The third question, science and histories has records of dinosaurs existed in before Ice Age. So how does the human beings come about, or since no God? So I shall explain, I shall answer these questions together. You have to realize that the Buddha taught two kinds of truth. The first one is known as Sammuti Satya, or conventional truth. And the second is known as Paramatha Satya, the ultimate truth. So, in the teachings of Sammuti Satya, conventional truth, there's where the Buddha used the conventional language. In other words, there are being, a person, I or you. So this Sammuti Satya can be seen through perceptions or sanya. So in other words, when one sees through perceptions or sanya, they say one see the shape or the form of a dog, then one called this being a dog. So this conventional language or usage is is agreed to all. So this is Sammuti Satya. But the Buddha also taught Paramatha Satya, the ultimate truth. So ultimate truth can only be realized through wisdoms of panya. When one sees through perceptions, one can never see Paramatha Satya, ultimate realities. So where the Buddha explained that there's no self, what is really exists is the mental and physical phenomena, or nama rupa, or in other words, the five aggregates. So one have to realize these two types of truth. And it's important to understand these two types of truth. If one could not understand well these two types of truth, then one may become confused. One who only knows about Sammuti Satya, one always see the reality in accordance with the Sammuti Satya. That means something that can be seen by the eyes or can be heard by the ear. For example, one see this form or shape, then one gives a name in accordance with the shape or form, a dog, a cat, a man, a lady, and so on. But if one doesn't know about Paramatha Satya, then it can become a problem for them, for those who only knows Sammuti Satya. For example, they may not know that there's the mind or consciousness. Does the mind or consciousness have any shape or form? There's no shape, no form. So those who do not understand Paramatha Satya and only know about Sammuti Satya, then they could not understand about the mind. Then it's even impossible for them to understand about Nibbana. They may ask, is it Nibbana is a place, like a heavenly mansions, and so on? Because they only believe in something if they can see with the form with their eyes, or hear it, and so on. Also, they could not imagine Nibbana because it's not a place. So it could be difficult to explain to them. So sometimes some people may use some simile, a place where the person is immortal. So then they may think Nibbana does exist. But if Buddha taught only Paramatha Satya and did not teach Sammuti Satya, then those who do not have the right understanding of improper attitude, then they may, due to their misunderstanding, they may not be able to realize the truth. So for those who have wisdoms, when they are told that all conditioned phenomena are not permanent, unsatisfactory, no self, and so on, those who have the wisdoms to understand it, then they could arouse the sense of urgency to practice the Dharma, to develop supramundane wisdoms by the practice of Satipatthana meditation, because they realize everything is impermanent, it's not everlasting, so they have the sense of urgency to cultivate wisdoms, to be free from this samsara, or the cycle of birth and death. But those who do not understand Paramatha Satya, and they do not have, they are not endowed with proper attitude, they may think, since the Buddha said there's no self, there's no being, no I or you, everything is impermanent, unsatisfactory, there's no self, no being, I or you, then they may think there's no such thing as my property or your properties, or then they may commit unwholesome deeds. They may steal or rob because he thinks there's no self, no I. So these properties do not have any owners. It's because they could not understand well the meaning of no self. They may think that there's no such thing as your wife, your children, and so on. They may commit more evil, such violating the third precepts and so on. So the Buddha had to teach the Paramatha Satya. But those who have some understanding about Samudaya Satya, they understand that there's rebirth. If one commit evils, one may fall into the state of loss. For example, in the world of hell, the world of hungry ghosts, or animal world, or the world of asuras. So, because they fear of this kind of suffering, then they avoid evil, doing a lot of good deeds, such as practicing dana, observing sila. Then they could be born in the happy realms, such as human world, Deva world. But as long as they do not realize Paramatha Satya, then they have to take birth again and again in the samsara, in the cycle of birth and death, and sometimes due to influence of evil friends, they follow the evil friends and commit all kinds of unwholesome deeds. Then they fall in the state of loss again. So the Buddha taught two types of satya. So one who understands that samsara is suffering, so one would follow the teachings of the Buddha to develop the Noble Eightfold Path, so that one could realize the form of truth and attain enlightenment. So the Buddha have to teach two kinds of satya: Samudaya Satya and Paramatha Satya. And the Buddha taught the Samudaya Satya also for various regions. One of the reasons is to encourage the practice of 4 Brahma Vihara. So do you know the practice of 4 Brahma Vihara? They are metta, loving kindness, karuna, compassion, mudita, sympathetic joy, or rejoicing over the success of others, and upekkha, equanimity. So here, the Buddha have to explain using the common language, conventional language. So, in order to practice metta, then the Buddha have to teach using the conventional language or Samudaya Satya. So, one can exercise the practice of metta, for example, by wishing so and so, may my friend so and so be well, happy, peaceful, or may my mother be well, happy, peaceful, and so on. So it's not possible to teach the practice of Brahma Vihara by Paramatha Satya. It's meaningless, for example, to wish that may the wind element be well happy and so on. may the fire element be cooled down. So it's meaningless. But you have to realize, even in the teachings of Karanya Metta, you study carefully, in the last stanzas of Karanya Metta, that's where the Buddha taught the practice of Vipassana meditation. You will read carefully the last stanza, not fall in the wrong views. Perfectly virtue, overcome the sensual desire, will not come back to the mother's womb again. Actually, this stanza implies that one who has attained the third stage of enlightenment. Then the Buddha taught Sambuddhasacca to explain other qualities. For example, hiri and ottappa, moral shame, moral fear. You cannot explain that there's no self who feels shame doing this evil. There's only wind element feel the shame. So, in order to explain hiri and ottappa, so the Buddha had to use conventional language. Then another important thing is about the karma. You cannot say there's no self going to experience the results. But when the Buddha explained karma using conventional language, it does not mean that there's a permanent I or permanent being. If you understand the teachings of dependent originations and anatta, you realize mental and physical phenomena are arising and passing away instantly. When there's a phenomenon arising at this present moment, this phenomenon is a new phenomenon, or it's not the old phenomenon. To summarize, there's a saying when the Buddha taught these teachings of dependent origination and anatta. He once said that there's a permanent self. The doer did, the doer the deeds, and the experience of the results are the one and the same person. Then the Buddha said, one is seized by the view of eternity, sasatatiti. But he once said that the doer did and the experiencer of the results are two different persons, are not the same person. Then one is seized by the other extreme wrong view, that's uccetatiti, or the view of annihilation. So in order to avoid these two extreme views, the Buddha taught the truth. There's anatta and dependent origination. Also, when a person takes birth again, you cannot say it's the same person nor the different person. So in other words, there's a famous saying, the teaching, neither the same nor the difference. It's because everything is arising and passing away in an identical stream. So in other words, the cause and effect, when there's a cause, there's an effect. This effect can become a cause, produce an effect. This effect also can become a cause and produce another effect. So there's a stream of cause and effect. In other words, as long as there's cause and effect, the results of the effect will be felt by this person in the samsara. So in order to explain of the karma, the Buddha has to use conventional language, teach using Samudri Satya. Then, when Buddha want to explain about past life, then he also have to use Samudri Satya. When Buddha want to explain the past life, one was such a person in previous life, or 2 lives ago, and so on. Then the other thing is to explain the purity of gifts. What's the meaning of purity of gifts? For example, an offering. Let's say you make an offering to someone who is endowed with sila, samadhi, panya. One is endowed with morality, concentration, and wisdoms. Then that gift will give rise to a lot of merits. Or sometimes the gift is purified by the givers. That means the givers of the gift observe morality well. The gift is obtained righteously, even though the receiver, the conduct of the receiver is not duly purified. Then this gift is purified the givers. You cannot say, I give to the wind element, I offer this gift to the fire element. I only offer this gift to the 4 material elements. So this is it's not right. So when Buddha explained the Dharma, whether ultimate realities or conventional reality, Samudra Satya, he is using the speech or words that is agreed by others. Buddha did not use any his own words. For example, the Buddha explained about Paramattha Dharma, ultimate realities. Then the Buddha has to explain that there are wind element, fire element, water element, earth element. These elements, for example, wind element, has the nature of movements, motion, and so on. So he is to teach the Dharma. He to make known about the ultimate realities. So these ultimate realities, for example, wind element, water element, earth element, or movements, hot, cold, thinking, and so on. In Pali, it's known as Vijja Mana Panyati. Vijja Mana Panyati. That means to make known that this Paramattha Dharma exists. Then meditators during the practice may have to make mental noting in order to develop mindfulness, to sharpen mindfulness. So mindfulness meditators are instructed to note from the rising, falling. Rising is referring to the movements. Falling is another process movements. Or lifting, pushing, dropping. So these words is known as Tajya Panyati in Pali. So if this Panyati, these type of Panyatis cannot be used then it's not then the Buddha cannot make known of this Paramattha Dharma to us. The Buddha cannot teach the ultimate truth. So at the beginning of the meditation, meditators may have to use this Tajya Panyati in order to develop the mindfulness, to sharpen the mindfulness. It's not possible to explain Paramattha without using any words or conventional language. So one has to believe, one has to really understand that there's a self, a person, a being, but one who does not understand clearly, there's one believe there's a self or soul residing in the body. The self or soul, atta in Pali, is permanent, everlasting. That's where wrong view arises, because of ignorance of the true nature of mental and physical phenomena. Then that ignorance gives rise to wrong view, thinking that there's an everything self or soul residing in the body and so on. So one has to understand that there are two types of truth, Sambuddhi Satya and Paramatha Satya. So those who follow the teachings of Buddha, they must endow with right understanding. So one of the right understanding is one has confidence, one has right understanding that there's this world or that world. In other words, one believe there's a rebirth. There's not only this world. As long as one has not yet removed the condition and attain enlightenment, then one will take birth again. The other right understanding is about karma and its results. But when in the teaching of Buddha, when the Buddha explained about rebirth, that teaching of rebirth is different from other teachings where they think there's reincarnations of a self or transmigration of a soul to another body and so on. So that teachings of rebirth is different from what other teaching taught about reincarnation or transmigration. So the teaching of Buddha does not try to explain the first cause, or how does the universe evolve, how does the universe begin. So the Buddha talks about four things that are imponderable. It's not possible to understand completely except the Buddha. The four imponderable dharmas are the nature of Buddhahood, jhana, absorption concentration, then ripening of the result of karma, and how this universe formed. But these are things that the Buddha did not teach, because it's also not important to the path, to the practice of Noble Eightfold Path. Even one say that one assume that there's a first cause. If one knows there's a first cause, then does it solve the problems in this world? Even one knows the first cause, by knowing this first cause, will the problems or suffering in this world will be solved? If you know the first cause of the beginning of life, then do you think your suffering will be solved, and the suffering of the world will be solved? So even one can, assuming that one can know the first cause, your suffering will also not solve. the suffering of the world also cannot be solved. Do you know why? As long as the condition is not yet removed completely. So, is this condition external to you or is internal? Actually, this condition is internal. What kind of condition we are talking about? Actually, in brief, you understand the teaching of dependent origination. As long as there's ignorance, craving, and clinging, then one cannot be free from samsara, cycle of birth and death. Birth actually is not suffering in your current teaching, but due to the consequences of birth. When there's a birth, there's old age, decay, death, pain, lamentation, associated with dislike, separation with likes, and so on. So in other words, as long as this condition is not removed, sometimes we blame the condition external. For example, if a person is being scolded by someone, so when he's being scolded without any reasons, or the other person was very rude, then anger will be arising. So when there's anger arising, then one may say that the cause of the anger is because that person was very rude, very harsh in her speech or in his speech. But one who understands the Dharma, what's the cause here? The cause is one of the latent defilements. There's patiga, or sometimes we can say the dosa, because of these defilements of dosa that has been lying dormant in the mind. So when there's this external condition arouse the arising of these mental defilements. So the cause is the defilements that have been lying dormant in the mind since the beginningless of this cycle of birth and death. If one always said the cause of my anger is due to external, my craving is due to external objects, or due to that person or this person, one can never attain enlightenment. One can never attain enlightenment if one always thinks the cause is external. So the cause is due to various conditions, but the important condition is internal, because of this ignorance, craving, and clinging. So the Buddha teachings is about not the first cause. Even if one knows the first cause, one still cannot overcome one's suffering and suffering of the world. So you can look at the world, the war. Even they try to find out the cause of war. As long as they did not look at their mind, then the war will never be solved. So one of very well-known philosopher but Bertrand Russell said that there's no reason to suppose that the world had a beginning at all. The idea that things must have a beginning is really due to poverty of our imaginations. Therefore, perhaps I need not waste any more time upon the argument about the first cause. So the most important is at this present moment or in this life, you follow the path, then eventually you could overcome your suffering as well as the suffering of the world. So one has to realize there are these two types of truth. Okay. Then the fourth question, what is Vipassana Samadhi? What are the factors and how one would practice and achieve Vipassana Samadhi at home? So I have explained Vipassana Samadhi in the last evening's talk. So in order to attain deep concentration and clear insight, one must be endowed with these 5 mental faculties. The first is saddha, or confidence in the enlightenments of Buddha, confidence in the practice, the path as shown by the Buddha. So if one has a confidence, one would put forth effort, strenuous effort into the practice. So when one put forth strenuous effort, then mindfulness becoming more and more constant and continuous. Then eventually one would attain deep concentration, Vipassana Samadhi. So when there's a Vipassana Samadhi, it gives rise to penetrate wisdoms. So if one practices at home, if the practice and the condition of the home is similar to the retreat center, then it's possible to attain Vipassana Samadhi. But if one practices 1 hour a day, then it's more difficult to achieve Vipassana Samadhi. Then the next question, please advise on daily practice at home. So we can say that the practice of mindfulness meditation is a lifelong practice. It doesn't mean that at the end of retreats, one will stop the practice. So one should have the determination to continue practice. For example, at least an hour a day. So one may practice walking meditation about 20 to 30 minutes. Then they only proceed to sitting meditation. So when meditators have time to meditate at home, in other words, to practice walking and sitting meditation, the way is similar to the practice in the retreats. But we also emphasize that even meditators are not practicing walking and sitting meditation outside the retreats. Then they should learn to develop general mindfulness. They do not have to make mental labeling. They do not have to slow down. They live a normal life, but learn to develop general mindfulness. For example, be aware of sleeping and so on. They do not have to slow down. But one thing that's important, there's mindful of mental defilements and emotional mental states. So outside the retreats, whenever meditators realize there's a defilements arising, then they should mindful of that defilements, for the anger or hatred or delusions and so on. If meditators develop the habit to mindful of mental defilements or emotional mental states outside the retreats, they may be able to sustain the purity of mind to a certain extent. Then, because of habit of mindful of the mental states, especially defilements and emotional mental states, it could be helpful to the practice, their daily practice, and in the following retreats. So mindful of mind is always important. In the commentaries to the Mahasatipatthana Sutta, the great discourse on the foundation of mindfulness, the commentary explains about 4 kinds of clear comprehensions. The first is having clear comprehension of what's benefit. When you want to practice mindfulness meditation, you know it's very beneficial, can lead you to attain purity of mind. But the commentaries say that one should not proceed to a practice immediately. One should consider the second clear comprehension. In those clear comprehensions of suitability, whether it's the time and the place is suitable to practice or not suitable to practice. So when one realizes that it's a suitable time, suitable place, or the right time, right place to develop mindfulness, then one begins the practice of 4 foundation mindfulness. So the third clear comprehensions is known as clear comprehensions of the domain or the territory of mindfulness meditators. The domain of mindfulness meditators is not external. Domain of the meditators is the mind and the body. So in other words, one begins to mindful of every mental state or physical phenomenon as it really occurs. So when the mindfulness is sharp and when there's deep concentration, then one would realize the 4th clear comprehension naturally. The 4th clear comprehension is comprehensions of non-delusions. In other words, one may gain some wisdoms or insight knowledge, realizing that the mental state is not permanent, or the pain is arising and passing away, and so on. So one can meditate as long as one does not have to do any mental work. Meditation is mental work. But sometimes meditators have to do some mental work while working. For example, writing the reports, reading of reports, or thinking how to solve problems, and so on. Then they may not be able to practice mindfulness at that time. But when they do not have to do any mental work, then they can always be mindful. Either be mindful in general, in order to develop general awareness, or when they have time to practice walking and sitting meditation, then they should practice more attentive mindfulness or more precise mindfulness. Then the next question, is lying down meditation allowed in Vipassana? Just observe falling and rising. So meditation can be practiced in all the 4 postures. Either concentration meditation or vipassana meditation can be practiced in all the 4 postures. There's walking, standing, sitting, and lying down. So in meditators choose to practice mindfulness meditation or vipassana meditation while lying down. The practice is not different from the practice of sitting meditation. It's only a change of postures. So during lying meditation, meditators can take rising, falling as a basic object, or the lying postures and 2-3 touching points as a basic object. Whenever there's other distinct object arising, then they should be mindful as it really occurs. So lying meditations is not different from the practice of sitting meditation. Then the next question, number 7, daily mindfulness. In practicing daily mindfulness, we are basically observing our movements by breaking them down into their different elements. Example, eating is not one movement, it's chewing, tasting, and swallowing. We do not break down the elements in mindfulness meditation. The elements, for example, earth element, hardness and softness is known as earth element. Hot and cold, or different temperatures is known as fire element. Movements, motion, the nature support or vibration is known as wind element. Cohesion, fluidity is known as water elements. So these elements are in the body. Whether meditators could see it or not, could experience it or not, depends on the strength of mindfulness and deep concentration. If there's no sharp mindfulness, and mindfulness is not constant and continuous, and there's no deep concentration, then it's not possible to see these elements. So we do not breaking down into different elements. But when we are practicing walking meditation, or be mindful of our routine activities during the retreats. For example, when meditators slow down the movements during walking meditation, then they begin to realize more and more processes movements when they slow down. If they do not slow down, they could not see the processes of movement clearly. They may see one continuous movements. For example, some meditators think that rising movements and the falling movements are one continuous process of movements. But when they have good mindfulness, they realize rising movements is one process. Then there's a subtle gap between the next falling movements, as if two movements are not connected. So they realize the falling movements is not process. And when the mindfulness is getting better, they realize rising movements is not a single process. It consists of 2-3 processes of rising. If the mindfulness and concentration are getting better, they could realize more and more processes of rising, falling, and so on. We do not. So all this true nature of mental, physical phenomena, true nature of mental and physical phenomena, can only be realized by the meditators when there's deep concentration. Then the next question: the degrees of mindfulness and concentration obtained in this retreat will it help in future retreat, or need to start from zero again? So, if a meditator has stopped the practice completely, then they may have to start from zero again. So, but if they are quite skillful, then they may settle down quite soon in the retreats. Or if they are not skillful, then it may take a number of days, a few days to settle down. So it's important to continue the practice at home and be mindful of the mind, especially defilements and emotional mental states, as much as possible. Then number 9, you mentioned impermanence arise due to a condition. What condition causes the appearance or images of a departed family members in the dreams? So what I have explained in the talk about condition is in terms of the Dharma, it means the relationship between the mental and physical phenomena, or the relationship between the object and the mindfulness. So it's because it's arising dependent on condition. That condition is also not permanent. If the condition is permanent, then it's not possible to attain enlightenment. So imagine one's ignorance, craving, clinging, tanha, upadana, and avidya are permanent. Then it's not possible to attain enlightenment. So similarly, when we talk about this condition, is in terms of reality. So what condition causes the appearance or images of a departed family member in the dreams? So if assuming that one just like in life, when one meets a good friend whom he has not seen or seen for a long time, so this missing him. So when there's a feeling of missing him, longing to see him or her, then the image of that person could appear in the mind. So similarly, if one has some kind of longing attachments, sometimes the image of a departed person can appear in one's sleep and so on. So this is about Sammuti Satya. But in the Paramata Satya, you want to realize the cause and effect, or the conditionality between the object and the mind. Then the next question, can we say that the thinking mind and the knowing mind, the one that knows the thinking mind, are the same type of consciousness, though they rise and pass away? So consciousness is giving a name in accordance with the condition. For example, when there's a sound or noise appear at the ear door, then the consciousness arising dependent on that sense object is known as hearing consciousness or the ear consciousness. So this hearing consciousness is arising and passing away instantly. There may be another sense object. For example, the smell, a strong smell appear, then a new consciousness arising. So this consciousness that's arising dependent on the smell is known as nose consciousness or smelling consciousness. So similarly, consciousness is given a name in accordance with the conditions. Then please explain on the differences of mindfulness, awareness, or consciousness. There is no difference between mindfulness, awareness, because when we want to explain about sati, the word sati, so sometimes we have to use different words. But the standard translation of sati is mindfulness, or some teacher translated as observing power, or the observing mind, or the watching mind. So when mindfulness meditators observe a process of a movement as it really occurs, then he's practicing sati. So consciousness, for example, if one is conscious of the arising of the thinking, and thinking is instantly passing away, so that at the moment of conscious, there's a thinking arising and passing away, that state of consciousness also known as mindfulness. But sometimes if one want to understand clearer between consciousness and what called wisdoms and perception, then the commentaries explain these three terms in terms of Vipassana meditation. This is under the chapter under Panya, understanding. So it explains in the commentaries. Sanya, this sanya or vijnana means consciousness, and panya, all can be said involves in the understanding. But that means there are different levels of understanding. Panya, sanya also understand consciousness, also understand the phenomena. Panya also understand the phenomena. But there are differences between these three levels of understanding. When there's a sanya, when the sanya is strong, maybe consciousness is weak. But when there's a consciousness of understanding or cognizing, that understanding also involves sanya. But with the arising of panya, that panya also includes sanya and vijnana. But for us, we may not be able to see these three different mental factors clearly, except the Buddha. So the commentaries give a simile. He say sanya, perceptions, only perceiving an object. For example, the color is blue, green, yellow, and so on. So perceiving the object in that way. But sanya is not possible to penetrate into the characteristics of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and not self. But consciousness, vijnana, knows the object, knows the color as a blue, green, yellow, and so on, but also comes to penetrate the characteristics of impermanent, unsatisfactory, and not self. But consciousness here does not have the ability to cause the path, the supramundane path to arise. Only the Panya has the ability to cause the manifestations of the supramundane path. So when one attains supramundane path, then the latent defilements will be uprooted. So if one want to see this way, consciousness means one comes to realize the three common characteristics of mental physical phenomena. At the moment of realizing the three common characteristics of mental and physical phenomena, the individual characteristics of the phenomena are also clear to the mind. But consciousness does not have the ability to cause the manifestation of supramundane path, but only Panya has the ability to cause the manifestations of the supramundane path. So this is about conscious, the differences between mindfulness, awareness, and consciousness. So there's no difference between mindfulness and awareness. Then the next question: may know how to watch pain. Do we need to mindful on how or where is the pain arise? So it's not important to know the way, where the pain or the location of pain. It's because pain is a sensation. It's an unpleasant sensation. And sensation is not a physical process. Sensation is a mental process. So when meditators mindful of pain, they should not concern or take interest where the location or where the pain is moving, because pain is a mental process. It's not a physical process. We do not really investigate into it, how this pain arises. Actually, in Vipassana meditation, we seldom look for the reason why this pain arises. Sometimes meditators analyze, I have this pain because my postures, because of my postures. But during the practice, we do not analyze the reasons or the cause. What we want to realize is that when there's a pain arising, then there's a mindfulness or denoting mind arising. Then we also, if the mindfulness is good, one comes to realize that the previous object has disappeared, then the present object, the pain, can arise. You want to see the cause and effect in this way. So we do not purposely find out why I have this pain, maybe due to my postures, or the cushions is too hard, and so on. Of course, meditators have to find a suitable postures in the practice. But even they have a suitable postures, eventually they may feel some pain in the practice. This is because rupa. This body is known as rupa in Pali. Rupa because it is afflicted by pain, for example, being bitten by the ants, mosquitoes, and other kinds of pain. So one cannot avoid this physical pain during mindfulness meditation. Then the next question in Mandarin, 请问受念处和心念处有哪些不同？所以在四念处有4种念处， 身念处、受念处、心念处、法念处。其实受念处主要就是指苦受、乐受，不苦不乐受。当然苦受如果再加以分析，仔细的分析，有身的苦受和心的苦受。所以苦受，身体的苦受，把你们就称为杜卡。身体的乐受就称为苏卡。然后心的苦受，心的苦受，就是忧受。忧受，心的乐受称为喜受。然后舍受。所以这些受也是个心法的过程。因为色身并不能够感受到喜乐苦等等，只有心才能够体验到在色身上身体的感受和在心浮现的感受。所以无论是在色身上或是在心升起，都是属于心法。它是在论章里，它是其中一个心所。所以这是受。但是如果谈到心念处，佛陀在开示四念处，其中一章就是心念处。其实心念处也是属于也是一种心法。当心升起的时候，心并不是单独的升起。每个心法升起是由2个部分组成。根据巴利文，一个是吉大，吉大有时翻译为心事，然后那个是杰达西嘎，心所。所以每次心法升起的时候，心并不是单独升起，是跟一些心所同时升起。所以在心念处，佛陀有讲解16种心法。16种心法。最主要的就是说，心以贪升起。所以你观察贪，我们就那么修行者就是在修习心念处。所以当心以贪同时升起，贪就是其中一个心所。所以当他观察贪，那么他在观察这个贪心，他是在修习心念处。如果心以嗔升起，那么我们就说这是嗔心。修行者就观察嗔，那么他就是在修习心念处。或是当心以愚痴的心所升起，那么我们就说这是愚痴的心。当修行者观察愚痴，他就是在修习心念处。那么反过来说，当心以无贪的心所升起，他知道无贪，他是在修习心念处。或是当他知道心以无嗔的心所升起，他觉知为无嗔，他就是在修习心念处。或是以无痴的心所升起，他就是在观察修习心念处。所以在练习当中，修行者并不能够去这样分别。当下什么升起，他就尽快的去观察。 所以我们说后一念之前一念换句话说，当心以嗔的心所升起，这个嗔心是被后一念察觉到，所以我们说后一念之前一念，所以后一念就称为正念，在中文有称为觉知的心，观察的心，所以受念处也是一个心所，它也是被后一个念后一个心识觉知到，所以它的不同地方就是一个是受，那个是心以某些心所升起的受，那么接下来怎样掌握正念，去培养正念正知见，感恩师父的教导，感恩所有的义工们的付出，感恩有这个佛堂，请恳求光恕我，如果有做错任何过失，有意无意，请宽恕我，steady on，要能够掌握正念，就是要懂得培育正念的目的，培育正念的原则跟技巧，如果修行者不知道培育正念目的，那么他可能也不能够掌握正念的方法，如果修行者正确了解培育正念目的是要了知，或透过亲身体验直接的经验了知或是了悟身心现象的真实本质，然后最终的目标是要获得处世间的智慧，断除烦恼之根，证悟涅槃。所以如果修行者正确了知这个目的，那么他在培育正念的时候，他必须不断的提升精进，精进就是精神或者说心力，能够觉知到每一个现象的升起到消失为止。有时修行者在培育正念当中，他在观察想或是其他心法，他不知道这个心法如想或是任何杂念什么时候消失。虽然他说他有做标记想，但是不知道想怎样消失，那么他就不能够达到他的目的。换作说，他不能够获得三法印的智慧。三法印的智慧就是透过亲身体验而正确了知身心现象的无常、苦跟无我。所以他懂得这个目的，那么他必须不间断努力，逐步提升精进，正念的觉知越来越专注准确，很有精神的在观察，正念很投入在一个现象，那么他才能够洞察到每一个现象的过程，从开始、中间的过程到结束。当他的正念和定越来越强，他会看到、洞察到身心现象的过程是非常短暂、非常迅速升起消失，那么他才能够达到他的目的，培育正念目的。所以在开始的时候，修行的正念并不是很专注、准确、很集中，所以我们就教导正念的修行者在练习当中，根据这个原则去培育正念。 这个原则就是在当下观察一个明显的现象，因为当正念或者说观察之心并不是很集中，所以在每一瞬间修行者的心同时意识到有2-3个现象同时浮现，有时有痛、有麻、有起伏、有响等等，所以修行者不知道当时要观察哪一个现象，所以我们就必须教导学员根据这个原则，当在观察色身上的现象，是观察一个最明显现象。比如说在坐禅，如果痛觉最明显，就观察痛觉；如果没有明显现象，就尽快引导正念去观察坐禅中的基本现象，腹部的膨胀收缩。如果腹部的膨胀收缩已经消失了，或是已经停止移动，或是非常模糊，修行者可以转移正念去观察坐的姿势和2个明显的接触点。那么在观察这3个基本现象之一，又有一个更明显现象在色身上升起，就应该去观察那个色身上的现象。当在观察色身上的现象，如果是非常明显，比如说痛觉很明显很剧烈，但是心有升起个杂念，修行者必须先观察当时升起的杂念，他并不是继续观察明显痛觉，因为观察心或者说心法是在正念的练习，是一个重要关键。如果修行者想要进步的关键，所以当修行者不断的练习，当正念越来越专注、准确，能够集中在一个现象，当修行者的正念非常专注、很准确、很集中在一个现象，当时可能已经或证得瞬间定，或者说刹那定。当下正念只是觉知到一个现象，那么他就不需要跟随这个原则，因为他正念当每刹那只是觉知到一个现象，这个现象升起即刻消失，又有个现象现起，正念观察下个现象，下个现象也非常迅速消失。当正念和定非常强，修行者也洞察到观察之心随着一个现象升起而升起，这个现象消失，观察之心也即刻消失。所以当时修行者所体验到的是现象与观察之心是成双成对出现。虽然他们的出现是前后，但是非常快速，有时看起来是同一瞬间、同一刹那。所以有了正念才有正知。在这边正知是洞察到身心现象的真实本质。所以当修行者正确了解培育正念原则，他自然就明白培育正念技巧。当下心觉知到一个明显现象，他就必须跟上去观察。当他心觉知到想，他应该跟上去观察，并不是把他的心拉回来。其实心是非常接近我们，并不是离我们非常遥远。如果修行的正念非常敏锐活跃，他是能够很快速的察觉到一个心法的升起，如想、昏沉等等。所以只要修行者正确了解培育正念的目的，它的原则和技巧， 那么他在练习当中也必须记住这三个因素。我们一直强调要有耐心，要有一种看忍的心，看忍的心，尤其是面对疼痛或是苦受，面对修行的一些障碍，如散乱掉举，他必须要有耐心的去面对它，去克服修行上的障碍。第二个重要因素就是具有毅力，或者说恒心，不会轻易放弃，不会因为痛就想放弃，担忧身体会出现一些状况。然后第三个因素，勇猛的精进，并不是一种普通的精进，我们所强调的是勇猛的精进。Then the next question, what's the differences between Vipassana taught by Bhante or in compared to Mr. Goenka? So I'm not sure about the differences. Also, this is not retreat about the difference between this meditation and that meditation. As long as you practice mindfulness meditation in accordance with the great discourse of foundation mindfulness, that means you practice all the four foundation mindfulness, then you are practicing in accordance with the teachings of the Buddha. So this is the answer to all the questions. So through this answer, I hope you are clear about the practice and especially the teachings of the Four Noble Truths. So this last question is for the committees. So last question, can we use earplug to cut off or minimize the noise during meditation? So it's not really encouraged. We have to learn to face with it. By this mindful of the sixth sense door is one of the subjects in the fourth foundation, mindfulness Dharma. You can mindful of it. If well, you can make more progress. So mindfulness meditation, mindfulness is a mental state. It's explained in the Abhidharma. Mindfulness is manifested as a mental state turning towards the object, coming face to face with the object. So meditators always running away or direct the mind to somewhere else, then they may not able to make much progress. And then the Abhidharma also explained that mindfulness is a mental state manifested as protections from the attack by kilesa or mental defilements. So when you have mindfulness, there's no defilements. But when there's no mindfulness, defilements can arise. So if you get mindful of these six sense thoughts well, you can make progress because you could see the consciousness clearly. So we do not purposely minimize the noise by using this earplug. Mindfulness meditation teach us to face the reality, not running away from reality.
Sadhu.